video? Video good today?
Thanks for your email. I will add it to there. Good. Okay, they're doing a story. It's going to be pretty cool, actually. It really is. It's going to be so different than how I like that in the Caribbean. So,
Yeah, we're probably
excited.
going to get close.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I'll put it on the calendar. Sounds good.
So do you run it? Or just leave it up there? You gotta hold the button. What, do you want to leave it up there?
So what did you want them, yeah, were we talking about IT? Were we talking about IT last time? Huh? Did you hear that they moved the supermarket to Motel 6?
We have been in closed session since 5 p.m. tonight. Welcome everyone for being here and thank you for coming. I, of course, want to mention our mission, to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. And this is our work session, our first meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Our first meeting, I'm very loud. I should have been a teacher. I can speak, but I guess I have that projection kind of voice. But I'm sorry that they can project. Did everyone hear that? We've been in closed session since 5 p.m. this evening, and thank you for your patience. We're starting a little late tonight, and welcome everyone, and I will ask Ms. Bell for a roll call, please.
Board members present: Susan Crotty, Susan Price, Jackie Romberg, Terry Fielden, Jim Dennison, and Dave Weeks.
Thank you. At this point in the meeting, we have public comment. I have one form. If there's anyone who hasn't completed a form that would like to, they're usually in the hallway, or I will make sure that you're able to speak as well. Mary Ann Kronauer, there you go. Sorry, couldn't tell if that was a G. Would you please come up? There's a table right here. We're just going to ask you, if you're speaking on behalf of yourself, you have 3 minutes. If it's for a group, you have 5 minutes. And if you can mention your name and your address after you push that little blue button. A lot of directions. You got it. There you go. Thank you very much. Just your name and address, please.
My name is Mary Ann Kronauer, 6S180 Cape Road, Naperville. And basically, in light of the tragedy at Newtown, Connecticut, I wanted to speak on school security. I have to admit that when we moved here, our children were all adults, so I never had any children in the school system, so I'm not familiar with the security systems that are set up in the building. But obviously we're all aware of fire alarms, but I didn't know if there was any way, any alarms that were connected directly with the police departments. If there aren't, I would like to suggest that schools have several locations where alarms be located for easy access for them to be used in case of an emergency. And also the possibility of a type of life alert pendant that teachers could wear that would be transmitted directly to the police department in cases of an emergency. I realize there's some problems with this. You don't want students having access to these devices, but I think those could be worked out. That's one suggestion. My second suggestion is a little more complicated. I have a granddaughter that attends a school in another state. And if you all cast your minds back to the week before Christmas, the tragedy at Newtown, Connecticut had already occurred. But December 21st, 2012, was supposed to be the end of the year according to the Mayan calendar. Well, at my granddaughter's school, one of the boys the day before said, "If the world doesn't end tomorrow, I will take care of it the next day." This young man had 2 orders of protection against him. So everybody was a little concerned about this. In fact, half of his parents did not send their children to school the following day. And No, and we also know that the shooter in Connecticut used his mother's weapons to carry out his tragic shooting of these innocent children. And and counselors, I'm sure, are aware of the students in this district who may have emotional and mental or who are emotionally or mentally disturbed. I'm sorry that I'm not used to public speaking. And because of that, I would like to suggest that because the children wouldn't have access to guns, but their parents may. They may have guns in their house, and their parents may have legitimate FOID cards for those weapons. But there's no way for anybody in the school to be aware of that. And I would like to suggest that a means of checking the FOID files to see if the parents of children who are known to be potentially dangerous, and I don't like to use these kind of words, but this is the world we're living in right now, and to see if the houses that the children are in may have weapons in them via the FOID card files. You probably may have to get a search warrant in order to have access to the FOID cards, but that would be something that the lawyers for the district would have to look into. And I just wanted, that's basically it, to check into the FOID cards for children who may have emotional problems. And I just want to finish by saying that when my daughter was telling me the situation at her school regarding this young man there, she said to me, I don't want to go to a tree planting memorial for my daughter. And I don't think any of you here would like to go to participate in a tree planting memorial service for any students who may lose their lives in this district. That's all. You're welcome.
Is there anyone else that didn't have a chance to fill a form out would like to come up? Please come up. And again, an individual has 3 minutes to speak, and if you're speaking on behalf of a group, you have 5. And if you could sit right at that table. Oh, I'm sorry, right the chair. And if that microphone isn't on, there's a little blue button. If you could just push that button and tell us your name. Great, your name and address, please. Thank you very much.
My name is Yolanda Moffett. I live in the 900 block of North Brainerd here in Naperville. I'm here on behalf of my child, an 11-year-old Jefferson Junior High student who had the unfortunate occasion of breaking her foot. That's not the problem. The problem isn't that my daughter broke her foot. Accidents happen. The problem is the way the school, the nursing community, the superintendent's office, the regional office, and I finally had to go to the state level, who referred me back to the school board, the reason I'm here tonight. I've had a history of nothing but complications ever since my oldest daughter was hospitalized and went into the hospital with A's and B's and came out with all F's. On an excused absence, with 3 teachers absolutely, totally refusing to change her grades or to give her the opportunity to correct it. We ended up in court over that. I found out the hard way that the Board of Ed being housed on the courthouse grounds means more than just one thing. I've had official documents changed. I've had just some really negative experience in that. My daughter's grades were not changed until the Supreme Court agreed to hear my case. The state Supreme Court agreed to hear my case because I found no justice in the local 18th Judicial Circuit Court system. I was told when I went down to inquire about my daughter's grades and that there was nothing that could be done. I said, well, yeah, there's something that can be done, and I'll be back tomorrow, the next day, and every day thereafter until something is done. I was told at that point that if I came back to the school, didn't raise my voice, didn't use a swear word, didn't threaten anyone, that I would be arrested. That was one instance. I've had multiple incidents that are just utterly outlandish. One time my daughter was attacked by an older student, even though the teacher, the principal, the child's teacher, everyone was aware of what was going on. They still allowed my daughter to be in a position that she was attacked by this other student. And then, despite the fact that she had to get nursing care, didn't even choose to inform me. My daughter gets home from school, I try and give her a hug, and she's like, ow, ow, ow. I'm like, honey, what's wrong? My ribs. Well, what's wrong with your ribs? I told you he was going to get me. Just 2 days before then, she had to run into the girls' nursing room, into the girls' restroom to get away from him. Everybody was fully aware of the situation. They failed to protect my child. And didn't inform me when she was actually hurt. When I tried to get in touch with them, nobody is available. They have this really, really unique way of stonewalling you by just being in meetings, unavailable, etc. They refused to allow me to transfer my daughter from that school to another school within the district, even though I agreed to provide transportation. That was illegal. That was just the second incident. Which leads us all up to today, where because my daughter broke her foot during the middle of one class and was disallowed from going to the nurse's station, told that the swelling was because blood was rushing to the site of the injury to help promote healing. My daughter was made to sit the entire gym class out and tried to make it to the nurse's station on her own, only she couldn't. And another teacher noticed the situation, and finally a nurse came with the wheelchair, and she was attended to. Okay, that's fine. It happened. I wasn't aware it happened like that until after the fact. When I became aware that that's exactly what happened, then I called the principal. At that point, the principal takes my child and the teacher into, first off, she had the armed guard to go and pick my child up from her classroom. I was never notified there was going to be a meeting, anything. They bring her into a room. According to my daughter, the principal was taking notes and asked questions from the middle of one class period to the middle of another class period. I was never even informed about it.
I'm sorry.
Am I running out of time?
Yeah, the time did stop a few minutes ago. That's
Okay.
it. If you can wrap it up, I'd sure appreciate it.
I'm saying to you that at this point, my child is going to school not to get an education, but to be in a hostile environment, and I don't appreciate it. I'm saying that this madness has to stop. Do what you want to me, but please don't do this to my child.
I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming this evening.
You're welcome.
And next on our agenda, superintendent staff school reports.
Great. A couple updates to the Board of Education before we move into the languages work session. So maybe if Ms. Knight and Cahoon want to get prepared for that, I can update the board on board and community on a couple of things. You may have noticed online through a Talk 203 or in an email that the 5 Essential Survey that we have talked about that's being administered by the state of Illinois is up and accessible. Note that we have noticed that there are some complications with accessing that survey. We are trying to, be in communication with the state to ensure that we do have access to that. Also wanted to give the board just kind of begin communication also with the community regarding changes that we're going to be seeing to ISAT coming up. Because over the past couple of years, we've had conversation with you and the community about the adoption of more rigorous Common Core state standards in English, language arts, and math. As part of these conversations, we talked about the higher expectations of a new assessment system set to debut in 2014-15. Tonight, I want to make sure you're aware of recent action taken by the Illinois State Board of Education that represents a significant change in how we measure students' progress not only in Naperville, but throughout the state. The Illinois State Board of Education recently decided to increase the grading scale for the ISAT, the Illinois Standards Achievement Test. The end result of this decision will be the percentage of elementary and middle school students meeting or exceeding standards is expected to drop substantially when the scores are reported next fall, even though for some students their actual scores may increase. I'd like to share with you a couple highlights from a press release issued by last week by the ISBE. State Superintendent Chris Cook stated, "The lower expectations of the previous performance levels did our students a disservice by not adequately assessing their ability to succeed after high school. Superintendent Cook went on to say the new, higher expectations will provide more accurate information about a child's development and ensure he or she is on track to enter college or career training programs. ISB reasoned that the shift in scoring was necessary to better align the ISAT standards with those of the Prairie State Achievement Exam, as well as to align it with the new Common Core standards. So I stated already, the new ISAT cut scores will cause a downward shift in the number of students who meet or exceed standards. According to the 2012 ISAT results statewide, 79% of all 3rd through 8th grade students scored as proficient in reading, and 86% of students scored proficient in mathematics. When using the new performance levels to analyze the ISAT data collected in spring 2012, the percentage of students who meet and exceed standards drops to 60% for both reading and mathematics. Obviously, this represents a major change and major reform in how we measure performance levels throughout the state. Parents will see the impact of these changes when they receive their students' score reports in the fall. Assistant Superintendent for Assessment Analytics, Tim Waranga, and Director of Communication, Susan Rice, are working on a communication plan on how we'll share this information with their parents and community, and there will be a lot more information to come. A couple points I do want to make sure I emphasize. The drops we expect to see are a result of rising expectations, raising the bar higher, not a reflection of student or teacher performance, and just a reminder for everyone that the ISAT is one measure we use when we look at student performance. It's not the only tool we use. So this is a conversation really that's going on throughout the state, not just here in Naperville. Tim, I don't know if there's anything that you care to add at this time, but again, more information regarding the impact of these potential changes will be coming.
Dan, can you give us your take on that? Do you think this is a good thing? Do you think it's going to help us be more realistic?
I may ask Tim to comment on that, but I think it's I think it is the intent to try to better align it with the PSAE. Tim, I don't know if you can expound on that.
The question was if this is a good thing by our estimation. What it will do is it should align our scores in the elementary and junior high with what the state uses is usually the term of rigor of meets and exceeds with the high school. And so the constructive way to look at it is that it will allow our students going through the system. And at this point, up to this point, it's been typical that the students will seem to have achieved a certain level through elementary and junior high and then suddenly drop off at the high school, which was not true. It just was a different scale. This is to try to align those two scales in some ways, and also to especially align us, and this is the very constructive part, to align us with the rigor coming with the Common Core and the PARCC assessments. And so to help us move our students forward in terms of those expectations.
We expect at some point soon, we hope, to be able to look at past year's data and then compare it to the new cut scores and be able to communicate what that would have looked like if those cut scores were in place. So we, as a community, have a better sense of really what that'll mean. Okay. So now we move into a conversation regarding elementary language learning. Tonight is really a summary conversation about the conversations that we have been having over the past couple of months. On the 17th of December, we shared with you the immersion survey results. The January 7th meeting, we presented findings from our dual language program review. And tonight our intent is to take a few moments to refresh you on the dual language programs and what one-way immersion means. We'll share with you the potential cost of expanding our dual language programs or introducing one-way immersion. And then we'll conclude with a presentation or discussion of our thoughts about next steps and invite the Board of Education to ask questions about what you hear and to share your thoughts about moving forward. So with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Dr. Hester and Ms. Knight.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start by taking you back to December 17th when we shared the immersion survey results with you. And in that meeting, Tim Waranga shared that the data suggests that approximately 1/3 of our parent population is interested, and that was our preschool parent population, is interested in one-way immersion, and that also the data also suggested that those parents who were interested had quite a few questions about one-way immersion and what that would mean for their students. For this presentation, you're going to need 3 documents tonight. The first one is the PowerPoint that's projected on the slide. are on the screen. The other one is the dual language cost projections, and then you're also going to need the one-way immersion cost projections. So we're going to begin this evening with just a review about what dual language is and what one-way immersion is, and Julie is going to do that for us. Sorry. This thing we had too. Oh, okay. There you go. Let's go.
Okay. So this is a little bit of a review from our December 17th meeting, but just to go over something in January 7th as well, but just to go over that the two different programs that we're looking at right now is dual language being a two-way immersion and one-way immersion. This slide depicts clearly what the different characteristics are of the program. The student population in a two-way program is very different from a one-way immersion. The students come from a majority language, which in our case is English, and also from a minority language, which in our case is Spanish. So the students also would have support from their home language, be it English or Spanish, from a dual language classroom. And also the ratio of the class is very important so that students are able to learn from one another. This program is also viewed as an enrichment program because of the way that students are able to learn and grow together through those purposeful groupings as we spoke about last time we met. And also that all the time spent in the classroom is purposefully planned out so that there is time spent in both the majority and the minority language throughout the planning of dual language. And in a one-way immersion program, as you can see here, it's strictly English first students learning in the target language throughout the time that they spend in the class. And also the students that are, certainly they can have some background in that language, but that's not a prerequisite to participate in the program. In a one-way program, it's absolutely that you can do a partial, which I think is what we were talking about a little bit at our last meeting, a 50-50 program or an 80-20 program. And there's also different ways to do this as early in their education, mid, or late. And there's also partial, how do you do a one-way immersion program? Exposure to the language takes place primarily in school. There isn't an opportunity for kids to get that target language practice at home. So that's a big distinction with a one-way program. And also, you can pick any target language, which is what we also talked about in the survey with what parents were interested in our community.
Okay. And then with that, I'm challenged by the mic tonight, apparently. With that, we're going to move into looking at the cost of the dual language program and then the one-way. So if you can just go to those documents. There we go. Okay, so this is the elementary dual language cost projection. And as you can see at the top, what we've included are the assumptions that the cost is based off of. And then starting at the middle of the document is a table that gives us the expenditures by category-specific expenses, and then the current cost for the 2012-2013 school year, and then what we are projecting that cost to be with full implementation in 2018-2019. So we used those current costs to make our projections. What I'd like to do is go through those assumptions one by one and give some explanation to them, and then move to the table and show how those numbers are represented. So I'll start at the top. As everybody knows, as Julie shared, our one language that we're learning in dual language is Spanish, obviously focusing on English as well. It is currently being implemented in the 5 schools, but we are not at full implementation yet. The assumption is based on 1 section per building at each grade level, K-5. Right now, in 12-13, we have 17 classrooms across the 5 schools that have the dual language program. In In 2018-2019, we will move to 30 classrooms, and that puts us at full implementation at that time. This assumption, unlike the program is currently being implemented, is built with the assumption that we will have a 0.5 bilingual reading specialist and a 0.5 learning services coach, and that comes out of the recommendation. So that's something that's in addition to having a bilingual classroom teacher in each classroom, and then we provide one assistant in each classroom from grades K through 3. And then, as you know, we've got Julie, who's our dual language coordinator for the dual language program. Then moving down to the salary projections, we're using actual salary and the cost of benefits for 12-13 to make the projections. The professional learning cost includes both professional learning that has been done and also the curriculum design work in those projections. When we look at assessments, we included the cost of the Spanish students' assessments, and that includes both ISIL and the STAMP. And the ISIL is the Illinois Snapshot of Early Literacy, and we provide that for students both in English and in Spanish. And then lastly, the assumption includes the transportation expenses. So then when we go down to the table, you give me 1 minute.
Yeah, just real quick. Do I understand correctly that the only thing that we don't have currently are the 2 half-time specialists?
We have, and I'll make sure Julie helps me with this one, we have a bilingual reading specialist at BB, and then we also have a bilingual reading specialist at Maplebrook. Yes, at this point. So based on that program review that was done, we want to make sure that we have at least a half-time dedicated reading specialist in those schools, and
per
then
building, you mean
per
now.
building, and then a half-time dedicated coach. So it could be one person fulfilling both.
And right now, we just have one for the whole. In other words, something's going to change as we add grades to this, right?
Yes. And so basically, we have reading specialists. Many of our reading specialists, though, are providing all services in English, most of our reading specialists, with the exception of BB and then Maplebrook. But then we also have instructional coaches in our building. But what we need is a bilingual coach, and we need bilingual reading specialists to fully support teachers and support kids.
And that's that 0.5 FTE.
Yeah.
So those are additions.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So we work down through the table. A couple questions that I think you might ask based on everyone I've showed these to so far with the numbers. The classroom salaries includes both the teacher salary and it includes those K-3 assistants that I spoke about. When you look at the classroom bilingual resources, one of the things that you might ask is, why do we have such an increase from 12-13 to when the program is in full implementation? And there are actually 2 reasons for that. One of those is that we included the cost of the new literacy and math materials in that, and those will be additional because we currently have resources for our classroom for monolingual English classrooms. So that will be an addition, and we are purchasing those right along with the math and the literacy. The other question that you might say, well, that still doesn't quite do it for me, and that's because as we analyzed exactly what the program cost us today, 2nd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade, the materials actually cost us quite more than the other grade levels do. And when you look at the fact that we have 2 sites that are implemented K-5, we have 1 site that is implemented to K-2. So it's in 3 sites that we hit that 2nd grade that has the higher cost. And then we have 2 sites where we're just at kindergarten. So it's not, so that's some of the reasons for the differences in those numbers. Another question you might ask is, are those resources a reoccurring cost? Will we pay that, we pay that money every year? And the answer to that is some of the money in there is reoccurring for consumables. And then also you have to consider the additional costs when we would redo science or social studies. But a lot of that cost is just what it will cost us when we get to full implementation. Everybody following me on that one?
Yeah, but I have a question. I assume the current cost
Right.
is what it's costing us for that program this year.
In 17 classrooms.
And there's not a whole lot of material costs and stuff like, I mean, that's reasonably, if we just kept this program, this is what it would cost us every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet you're saying in the $4.5 million, some of that's startup cost?
It's change in curriculum. So we've got some change in curriculum in there that we're assuming as we move with the Common Core.
But whether they're dual language or mono language, we're going to have that cost anyway, right? So is that's subtracted down below? Okay. Thanks.
Well, yes. Okay. All right. The other thing, building level resources. What we do with building level resources, and this also happens with ELL services, but more with either if it's one-way immersion or the dual language, is that we add materials to the classroom literacy closet, so that's a resource for teachers. And then we also add resources to the LRC so that when our students go to the LRC, they have materials that will support their reading and any of their research. Okay. Then when we move down to the professional learning, that has the professional learning of the monthly meetings plus any other additional professional learning. It also covers some of the curriculum, most of the curriculum development costs. And then the Spanish assessments, I think I already gave you those two assessments, the ISOL and the STAMP, and then the transportation. So that gives us what we have currently and then the projection for the total cost. But then what we did is we looked at 3 set-asides that we thought that we could actually pull out and determine. So one of those set-asides is the cost of the regular classroom cost. So in that number, you'll see the teachers and the assistants again, and looking at where we provide for general education enrollment assistance. So we use those numbers. We looked at the fact if we did not provide if we did not provide dual language, we would be required by law to provide bilingual services. So we estimated that to be about 2 teachers per school where bilingual services are needed. So that would be a case where a teacher has basically a caseload of students. And then that helped us arrive at what we thought we could provide as a net cost for dual language. So that's what I'd like to do is open up any questions with the dual language projections, and then I can move to the one-way. Jackie.
First question, how does the magnet program have a different cost than the programs at the other schools besides transportation?
Not besides transportation.
Okay. And I didn't think so, but didn't know if the delivery was different. Also, when we talked about providing the bilingual services, that amount of 440, that's certainly more than 2 teachers, right?
For all the buildings.
2 teachers per building?
For all the buildings
yes.
where all those students would be returned
Okay,
to.
2 per building. Okay,
Right.
great.
Dr. Hester, so are you saying that the incremental cost to having this dual language program, if we didn't have the dual language and provided the support services separately, it's cost you an extra $1 million to have the dual language? That's an incremental cost?
Yes.
And is that because the average salary of a dual language teacher, or what accounts for that?
I'm looking at Dave just to make sure I don't make a mistake here, but the basic that we looked at is that each dual language classroom costs us about $40,000 more than a gen ed.
And you hit it
Because
right
of-
on the head.
Yep,
The
it's
additional
incremental.
cost of the teacher over a regular elementary
Okay,
teacher.
so that's taking all that into account.
The having the assistant in the classroom and things of that nature.
Well, but I thought that you said you took into consideration the assistance for
It's
that. Or is it a different ratio that we
It's a
use?
different ratio than we.
Yes.
Yep.
Very good.
Yes. Okay. Any others? All right. Then I'm going to go through the one-way immersion. Okay, so obviously the document is set up in the same way, and I'll run through those assumptions. Right now, this assumption is built on one language, and that's Spanish. And I understand with one-way immersion that we could consider another language. One of the things that we've really looked into with providing whether it's dual or one-way immersion, it's highly recommended that we have some coordinator, whether at the district level or the building level, who obviously speaks that language fluently, and then who is also well-versed and educated in immersion education. So, for example, if we were to add Spanish one way, we would want a coordinator who could work with that one-way immersion program. But then additionally, if we were to add Chinese, then we would need to make sure that we had someone who could support the program development, the curriculum development, and everything else that goes with it, the staff support, looking at observations of teachers who had that fluent Chinese. So that's really important in looking at this model. The second assumption is that students will be English native language speakers remaining in their home school. Thus, that gives us the one-way immersion. Now, based on the last conversation that we had from the one-way immersion survey, we went with the idea and some of the conversation that we heard of building a model that would show this being implemented in 7 schools. So the way we arrived at 7 was that we currently have 5 dual language sites, and if you would keep those running as 5 dual language sites, then if you look at the remaining elementary schools, we have 9. Then when we looked at Ellsworth and Napier, one of the things that concerned us with implementing one-way immersion there is that we felt we were dividing those 2 schools in half. You would have 6 classes of students doing the one-way immersion, and and then the 6 doing the general education. So then you'd have 2 first-grade teachers who really wouldn't be able to collaborate to the degree that we would want them to, and then they wouldn't have colleagues to collaborate with unless they moved to another site. So that's why we thought that would break up the school community and the general sense of collaboration and communication in those buildings. So we built these projections off of 7 schools, and you see the schools listed there.
So would you allow some sort of magnet program for those families that do not have a choice?
I think those are things that we could answer. We didn't consider that in this assumption, though. Great question, though. We have 1 section per building at each grade level, just like the dual language. We would start with, the idea is to start with 7 kindergarten classrooms in year 1 of implementation. We wanted to show what that would look like. When it would be fully implemented, it would be 42 classrooms in year 6, reaching full implementation. Again, we would have 1 bilingual classroom teacher per grade, and then each immersion classroom teacher, I think this is really important, would displace 1 regular K-5 education teacher. So that would be 7 teachers in year 1 if you would choose to do this, if this would be the chosen way all at once, or 42 teachers at full implementation in year 6. And then we would need 1 district level, one-way immersion bilingual program coordinator. And then we set a 0.5 FTE bilingual learning services coach per building. It's important to know that we did not build in a bilingual reading specialist into these assumptions. Reason being is that we have a choice between going 80-20. So 80% of the day in the second language and then 20% in English, moving those ratios over time, or going with a model that's 50-50. So if we chose the 50-50 model, it would be unlikely that we would need the bilingual reading specialist. And then lastly, the professional learning and curriculum design, again, are folded in 1. So when you look at this model, the first thing I have to pull out and apologize for is an error under classroom bilingual resources. The commas are in the wrong place. That is, you just need to move them 1 to the right. Sorry about that. But it's 110,453 and 662,718. Did it affect the total? No. Great question, though. So in looking at this model, it's built the same way. And then the offsets that we did for this are the regular classroom cost only. We thought the resources, depending on the 80-20, might be a little challenging to project and predict at this time. And then the other thing is the relationship between the numbers with the resources. Again, that's one that we did use current dual language numbers, but again, we would have to know if it were an 80-20 model or the 50-50 model to have a true projection on the resources. So at this time, I'd like to entertain any questions you have about one-way immersion. And what we did is we built a model to show so that you could see what we thought would be the projection of the expense if it were to be fully implemented.
So these are for elementary school. What happens in junior high?
I should have said that from the beginning. We are having this conversation completely about the elementary. The dual language that will be in junior high was not included in those first costs for dual language. So then we have additional costs, obviously, for dual language at junior high.
And then high school.
And then high school as well, as we move into content instruction and different courses.
So I know one of the presentations you did talked about the value, and we've had conversation about the value of second language learning or world language learning for student learning. But if we're limiting this to a single classroom, how is that language benefiting? How is that benefiting all of the students in the district for the investment that we make?
I don't think I understand the question.
Well, the idea of introducing world languages in the elementary school and improving what we're doing there is that there is benefits to overall learning for students. Students who are have a second language, it improves their own language in their native language. There's other learning values to it in the pie. If we are limiting it to a single classroom in our elementary schools, to a group of kids, and we're making a considerable investment of several $1 million right now, how is that then benefiting all students?
Are you talking about if we would implement in just one section per building versus the full building?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, it's benefiting the students who are taking it. It's obviously not benefiting all students in that building, except the culture of the building.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe if just, I think what Dr. Hess was asking for in questions just for a second would be anything related to the numbers that are on the sheet that you looked at. And then I'll have a couple of comments regarding our position and thoughts about moving forward. But if there's questions that you have regarding the one-way immersion document that she has up on the screen right now.
Okay.
Yes.
This is based on all these immersion programs featuring one language. For each language we introduced, would it essentially be that coordinator salary, or how much more expensive does it get if we have German or Chinese and Spanish instead of just Spanish?
Well, I think those are things that we would have to consider in our planning, is that we have to have somebody leading that work.
Right.
Because we've already learned from dual language that the teachers can't do that. So we would have to introduce costs for each language introduced.
Right, but it sounded to me like that cost is a single person. Is that simplistic?
Single person
Per
language.
Yes.
Right. So if this is Spanish only, let's say, if we did Spanish in 3 of the schools and Chinese in 4, we'd have to add essentially one more fairly high-level salary, right?
You would, unless you're doing it in one school. Maybe you do a part-time, or look at other options of a consultant base, which would be yes. But you are adding salary in some way.
But not incremental.
Okay. All right. So do we have more? Go ahead, Terry.
A couple questions. Now the cost here, these are new program. These would be relatively new programs or expanding programs, right? The immersion's new, right?
The one-way immersion would be new program. Yes.
Okay. So we're expanding the dual language, and that's on top of the all-day kindergarten and so forth, the other programs that we're already going to implement in the districts. So you're looking at roughly, was it $4 million in increase in budget over the,
Right.
after both programs are fully implemented. The other question I had, which is a lot of money, you said 33% of the parents responded on immersion that they were in favor of it?
It's 33% responded with an interest.
With an interest. So, based on that 33%, you're going to recommend we spend $2.1 million, and there's going to be enough participation.
Maybe this is the appropriate time for me to make my comments. We're not bringing a recommendation to you tonight.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. I'm asking.
Right.
You've got the number, $2.1 million. Roughly 33% people have expressed interest, but is that enough to justify?
Can I just jump in one second? Sure. Thank you very much. It was a very thorough presentation, and these questions are not directed at you. These were questions for the board to discuss. But you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
And you're doing exactly what we would like you to do.
Yes.
To be quite honest with you.
There is nothing wrong with the presentation.
So
There's nothing wrong with the presentation.
This is our position. We'd like to we almost look at it as phases. We'd like to begin, the first part of this moving forward would be to begin by continuing to improve and strengthen our current dual language programs. I think from the reports and the conversations we've had, we hear that as an interest of the board, and we think that's an area that we can improve. We'd like to then evaluate our most recent dual language programs that we've added at Elmwood and Steeple Run to determine if they would be better served as potential one-way immersion sites based on the number of Spanish language students who are enrolling in those two new programs. And then finally, and you've heard me talk about this a little bit, and at the February 19th meeting as part of my report, I'll be giving you more detail about it, but we would like to take advantage of our planned community engagement process that will begin later this spring to get input from the community about future expansion of elementary language learning. So we're not bringing forward to you a recommendation at this time to expand beyond just currently our current dual language programs at those sites and strengthening and improving those programs. And you're doing exactly what we had hoped you would do out of this presentation, is to have conversation and give us sense of direction about your thoughts as a board about potential expansion of our English or of our language programs at the elementary school. So our position would be now, moving into next year, to continue to improve and strengthen our current dual language program, and the only expansion would be by introducing new kindergarten classes at the sites that we already have them.
Yes.
The dual language projections here, how many of the recommendations or recommendations that addressed deficiencies that we saw with the evaluation are built into this? Did I?
I know what yeah.
You do? Wow.
I do.
That's why you got a PhD.
You're the first.
Oh, snap.
So.
That was a slow pitch, dude.
It does. It's included in the professional learning. And I do want to say, though, that we obviously have a running budget, and in our running budget we make priorities. And by using either Title II funds or current district funds for professional learning, we have already considered and have begun the process of looking into a consultant that could help us with the program targets. So that is not in here, but it's in our existing running budget, so we're good with that. We have also, in terms of any additional resources that aren't supported by these numbers, we've also looked through that through the literacy and math processes in any additional way that we need to. So we've got a lot of that covered.
All right, well, just in the idea of asking what the board feels about this and direction, let me preface it by saying we have a pie that is so big. So when we look at programs like music or languages or anything that's sort of an add-on to what we would consider a core curriculum, you want to make the argument that that investment is improving the teaching and learning of students. Music, certainly there is an argument about that. It improves math learning and understanding and spatial learning. Music does offer value to general learning for students, as does world languages. I've seen the data. I've not seen the comparison that one does one better than the other. I think that's a values question that a community has to understand. We do need to understand that we've made an investment in music, not as much as some neighboring districts. They've got a lot more that they're providing in schools, and you can see that, and the students are coming out. So you make that investment, and you want to see where that takes you. As a community, I think that we need to understand again that the pie is so big that if we're going to provide languages, we provide music to everybody. They get recorder in second grade, then they move on and they choose an instrument and they have summer programs. The pie is only so big. We're not talking about extending the day. We're not talking about adding on to our classrooms. And I think that we need to make some value decisions about what we want to do. I think both enhance learning, improve, add on to it, but we're going to need to make some choices because we can't do them both well. And we don't want to do them halfway. So that is my perspective, and I think that that is a really important place to do it. I think that conversation you're talking about is really one about community values and a tough discussion we need to have.
Susan, what do you mean when you say are you saying we can't do music and immersion?
I don't think we can do it. I don't think that, no. I think, my opinion is that if you're going to spend $4 million that's only targeted to one classroom, that's not a good expenditure of money. Currently, we provide music learning to all students. If we're going to do a language, and we've decided that as a value we want to do language, it should be provided to all students.
Now, I'm not sure where you're coming up with $4 million, but
that's just elementary. Now we're
number.
talking about junior high. If you're going to do it while you're moving on.
Not for many years, we're not. I don't see $4 million added
In
up there
whatever the
anywhere.
case, if we're going to make that kind of investment, I think it should enhance learning for all students.
And I would assume that our goal would be to make this available to as many people as are interested, if only a third are interested. I mean, we may not do it year one, but if there's an overwhelming success and request, then I would assume we would expand that program because although there's an incremental cost to teachers and stuff like that, there's not an incremental cost to facilities. We can do 20%, 40%, we don't need extra facilities for that, so it seems to me that's very easy to adjust. I would question that there's not value to just as diversification in our schools, in our communities, has a value for everyone. I would suggest that bicultural learning will affect everybody. Obviously, those that are involved more than others. I do have a question, though. I mean, the dual language.
Mr. Weeks, can you just pull the mic closer?
Oh, I'm sorry. The dual language. I mean, that's already baked in, isn't it? I mean, there's not the question being asked about dual language is different than immersion. You're simply showing us what the dual language to continue what we've already chartered is going to cost, right? That's not up for debate, correct?
In terms of dual language, we, even though we've faced some challenges, we do feel that it is the best means for providing the bilingual education, and we would like to stay on the course with our current dual language programming.
Because the dual language addresses a population and something that we'd have to do anyway, and they feel that it's doing a certain way. And I guess what I'm saying is that certainly based on certain facts about what we're doing and the resources, I feel that if we're going to expend that money, it should benefit as many students as possible. Certainly the dual language does not benefit, but it is providing a program that we would have to provide in some format. We do that with music. I feel, this is an opinion, if we are going to expend the resources, they should benefit all students because this is an enhancement of learning that everybody should benefit from.
I agree that the dual language is probably a good place to put money and resources within there. I'm not as convinced on the immersion yet. I understand what you said about starting in 2 schools, but I'm not as convinced that it's going to take off and really provide us good benefit. The other thing I'd like to see is a more macro picture of the budget, where it includes all-day kindergarten, and includes incorporating these programs and what happens with the money and how our cash flow and so forth works out, so that we're looking at the whole picture and not just approving a slice of funds, look at the entire budget as it all shakes out. Because, like I said, I do think the dual language is the right place to put money. I've been through Maplebrook, and it's actually my adopted school this year. I think the kids have really benefited from it, mostly because they got a lot of interaction with themselves and they're able to teach themselves. I'll also echo the same thing about the grade points that dropped. We're supposed to get a little bit more information on that and as to why that happened, so we could really focus in on that and make that correction. But I'll support the dual language. I just got a little trouble with the immersion.
Could you maybe, when we talk about it again, paint an even bigger picture with this included? And when we just talked about the ISAT scores and the changes in that, and we talk, you brought us Common Core so many times, and how it fits into that picture and how we would support these students and how it would support our schools. And I really appreciate Susan's comment on, when we look at things, our job is to deliver this. We always say to all students, each student, every student. I mean, those are the words we use when we talk about things all the time, and I really appreciate that, because we need to decide as a community value, just like you said, where we want to go. It's something we've talked about. Since we got rid of it in the elementary schools, I think that must be 11 or 12 years ago, when we used to do a program poorly, to bring something back. So I appreciate that. It's been kicked down the street a bunch of times or brought different ways, and I know it's hard to see what something could be or should be from the outside.
And I'm very appreciative that the dual language is in the schools. We're learning from it. And the report last time where we weren't really sure that our native Spanish speakers were making the gains we wanted them to. We don't want anyone to be left behind. So we need to, before you expand something, I totally support your approach. Let's get the district's approach. Let's get some of those things evaluated, and then decide the costs going forward. David?
A couple questions. One, are we still engaged with Dr. Falstead or Carl, whatever his name is?
We are not currently.
We are not. I guess, once again, I see things a little differently. I actually see this affecting significantly greater number of people than, for instance, all-day kindergarten, because it's going to over and over impact them. We believe in equal access to education, not equal education. We delineate VOTEC. We do not teach everyone all the same stuff. What we should do in a free public education says that we offer every student that wants access to all things that we offer. That's different than saying everyone's got to take everything we offer. This is 2 years away. I mean, if we approve it today, with all the hiring and all that stuff, I'd like to see us hire someone that will spend, their task is to really get good data to us, et cetera, et cetera. The other area that strikes me is the community continues to say, and we'll see if this is borne out, we want people prepared for today's workforce. Well, certainly bicultural education is one of those things that's going to be high on that list. I suspect also that some of these costs will level out, because although now it's going to cost more incrementally to get teachers, I'm guessing over 20 years that will fade out. I also believe that I'd love to see us do a new program, set the bench, explore AV ways of doing this, combining classrooms through, I just see all kinds of ways that this can be implemented, but it's got to be done with the right amount of resources. Better not be done on a shoestring. So I would strongly, strongly, strongly support it. And I would love to see us at least get someone who is going to have some experience and really get empirical evidence for us, even if that means a salary.
I'll echo what a number of people have said. I'd like to see some more evaluation metrics around this, just some more data around evaluating what we're doing right now to give us some facts and data to make decisions based on. I like this. I think this is very thorough. I think it's well done. But if we could get a little bit more around that, I think it would probably help us, in making some decisions going forward.
I'm just going to open the door for Tim to provide some of the data that he's been able to get since our last presentation on language acquisition.
We did testing in December for our students in the dual language program. We've done an initial look at this data, and it's very quick. It's also an initial look. We're still diving into what it means. We're pleased with the data we're seeing, but just as a reminder, we tested the students in the spring. We moved up the testing to December this year to test our students. And if you look, the students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade were given the stamp test, and we were able to look at the reading, listening, writing, and speaking this December. If you recall, last spring we were only able to look at the reading, listening, and speaking scores. Go ahead and advance the slide. Go ahead and one more. This is the sort of data it provides. It provides us scores looking at, in these cases, on the left you'll see the color coding for each of the bar graphs. And we coded the top 3 listings of 4, 5s, and 6s on this as kind of grouped together as our initial feel of what our targeted look for these students should be. We're still analyzing what that should be and still interacting with Avant to see what those scores could or should look like. These scores, if you look, are 3rd at the top, 4th to follow, and then 5th to follow that. In terms of these scores, go ahead and this was in reading. This now is in listening. Again, 3rd at the top. We have again, a lot of the kids in the purple or the intermediate low advancing up through the system as we go into the next slides. This is the writing, which as you think about how language is delivered, and as I speak with my experts, Julie and Catherine, the idea of the reading and listening is the input of the language, and that usually advances first. And then the speaking and the writing, which is the output from the students, then follows. And so, as you can see, these scores aren't as high, but they would not be expected to be as high because the students are advancing in the input part of the language first. And then as you advance one more slide, the speaking, again, you can see students and their scores here not mirroring the input, but the output being advancing.
Tim, what are the percentages? Excuse me.
The percentages are the 4s, 5s, and 6s combined. So intermediates and advanced. It's when we're looking at the scores, I'll be honest, part of what we look at. In this case, that was there are different scales for the two. This is actually the novice and the intermediates together. The speaking and the writing are different than the other two. When we look at the scale score descriptions, these are the ones that appears to us to be the ones that we're targeting for the growth on it.
Could you back those slides up twice now that I understand that? One more, yeah.
So here we have the intermediate 4, 5, and 6 together.
And did we do any arithmetic or just reading and writing?
I'm sorry?
Did we do that?
So that's what you're wanting to see, right?
Yeah. This is just STAMP is just a language acquisition.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
And so when we last presented the data, we had the data for the English reading scores, et cetera, and also the mathematics. This is for Spanish acquisition scores. Okay.
Tim, how does the breakout? I wouldn't expect that you have it here, but how does the breakout work between the native speakers?
We don't have that breakout yet. We just got this data literally last week, and so this is our initial look at it.
So I'm going to suggest that we take a little bit more time with this, and that if it's of the interest of the board, we can come back with a little bit more in-depth and detailed report on this assessment. But just in terms of, so that maybe we can bring this one to a close, the input that I've heard is that we're going to begin now by continuing to improve and strengthen our current dual language programs. Our focus is going to be on that, which would include an evaluation of the newer programs that we've begun at Elmwood and Steeple Run, and then use our community engagement process to get additional community input regarding exactly what I've heard you talk about. How does this kind of fit in with everything else and all that you're doing? And that then at a time which when we have the data and information, we would come back to the Board of Education and show you any recommendation that we may have about one-way immersion programs with all of that information for you.
And I think just one additional piece to Susan's point and to Terry's, how does this fit into the whole?
Right.
They approached it a little differently, but we have this, and how does it go into other new programming, existing programming? David?
Can I ask a question on that presentation before we get too far away from it? You said we did this. Is this the first time we've done STAMP, or we did it 2 years ago? Help me understand. You were saying we did it in the spring, and then we did it.
Last year, we were commissioned to find a language acquisition assessment. We went to Avant, which we last year gave in the spring. And as part of the information, we hadn't taught our students to, for instance...
Okay, yeah, I remember.
Okay.
So there's no relevant comparison to last time and this time.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
The next section on our agenda is the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda for this evening.
I move approval of the consent agenda as item 6.01 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. And
Roll call.
roll call.
Romberg,
Yes?
Dennison,
Yes.
Crotty,
Yes.
Weeks,
Aye.
Price,
Yes.
Fielding,
Yes.
Motion carries. And with that, I'm sorry. Oh. With that, we have some exciting news. With that consent agenda involved some hiring of some key positions in our district, and I will ask our superintendent to introduce them.
Well, I have some introductions to make, and I know we have some very patient young individuals that are sitting out here that I did promise I would. Now, don't get used to this. You won't all be dismissed from a board meeting partially through it. But after I have an opportunity to introduce you and you stand to be recognized, please feel free to carry about your evening. But I do have three important introductions to make this evening and ask that you stand so that the board and community gets to see who you are, and I'll talk a little bit about you. And we'll begin with Tara Allen. Tara Allen will be the principal of the Ann Reed Early Childhood Center beginning in 2013-2014. So congratulations, Tara. Tara is the current assistant principal at the Early Childhood Center and will assume the position following the retirement of Principal Jeannie Matula at the end of this school year. In addition to serving as the assistant principal at Ann Reed, Tara has been a school psychologist at Beebe Elementary and a former district behavior learning specialist. She began her career in Naperville 203 as a school psychologist at Lincoln Junior High School and Elmwood Elementary in the early childhood program when it was located in Elmwood. Terry has extensive knowledge in the area of IEP development, academic interventions, and facilitates building, staff development, and cultural diversity. She holds a Certificate of Education Leadership, Type 75 from North Central College, and a bachelor's degree in psychology from State University of New York, Oswego, and a master's from the University of Buffalo. So we are excited about Tara's vision for the Early Childhood Center and excited to have her take this next step in leadership. So congratulations, Tara, and if you'd like to maybe just introduce some of the people that you brought with you.
And my two sons, Blake, he's 9, 4th grader, and Connor's a 1st grader.
Great. Congratulations. All right. I think the next individual came by himself, but we'll still introduce him. Brad Kaufman, please stand. Brad was appointed Chief Financial Officer, Associate Superintendent for Business Services for the district beginning in 2013-2014. Congratulations, Brad. Brad is currently the Assistant Superintendent for Business Services in St. Charles Community Unit School District 303, and he'll assume the position following the retirement of our good friend Dave Zager at the end of this school year. Prior to beginning his service in St. Charles in 2006, Brad was the Assistant Superintendent of Finance in Oshkosh, Wisconsin from 2000 to 2006 and Business Manager in the Huron South Dakota School District. He has successfully negotiated union contracts, implemented new accounting systems, and led long-range financial and facilities planning processes. Originally hailing from Wyoming, Brad earned his bachelor's degree in accounting and an MBA from the University of Wyoming. He also attended the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, where he earned a master's degree in school business management. Brad, congratulations. We're excited to have you on our team. And then our last introduction for the night, Kane, please stand. Filling the position of Deputy Superintendent will be Kane Osborne. Congratulations, Kane. Kane will be joining Naperville from Niles West High School in Skokie, where he has served as principal since 2007. During his time at Niles, he's focused on improving ways to meet the needs of a highly diverse student population, where more than 60% of the students do not speak English as the primary language at home. Prior to becoming principal, Osborne served as the division head of the English and Fine Arts Department at Wheeling High School and taught English at Niles West from 1998 to 2005. Among Kane's teaching experiences is a course in Introduction to African American Studies, which he designed and co-taught at the University of Illinois Chicago. Kane served as the vice president of the Niles Township Federation of Teachers, working on negotiations and communications for 3 years from 2001 to 2004. He holds a superintendency endorsement and administrative certificate from Loyola University. His master's degree in English and American Literature is from the University of Illinois Chicago, and his bachelor's is from Southeast Missouri State University. Kane, congratulations, and I know you brought some people with you. Would you please introduce them?
Sure. This is my wife, Jenny Rosine, who's also a junior high teacher. This is my 5-year-old son, Auden Patrick, who's in some stage of getting sick or getting well. We're not sure which. And this is my 9-year-old John Morris Osborne, who's glad to be here.
Well, great to meet all of you, and congratulations. Yeah. So again, congratulations. We're excited to have you here. We welcome you to the District 203 family and look forward to many years of leadership from each of you. So thank you and congratulations.
Computer took a nap there, and please understand with the young families or anyone that needs to leave, we certainly understand. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, families, for staying through this last couple of hours. No. And our next topic, our discussion, we have two things on our agenda. Our discussion without action, which will traditionally, things in that category come up later, either later in the month or later in another month as action items. The first one is the 2013 general and optional fees.
So I'll turn this over to Dave Zager. We have two minor recommendations for fee adjustments, and now I'll have Dave speak to those.
Sure. The first recommendation is the heart monitoring strap that is purchased by 6th grade students and then retained by those students for the rest of their education in the district. The current fee is $11. We're recommending that go to $13, and that just reflects the cost of the strap to the district. So that's the reimbursement of the cost. The second recommendation is an optional fee. That's for the purchase of the junior high yearbook. It's been $16 since 2005. We're recommending that go to $18. And again, that reflects the increase in costs that we have for the production of that yearbook.
Thank you, David. And again, we're not voting on this tonight, so if you have any other questions you want to direct to Dave or any other questions with any of the other general or optional fees. Next item is Summer School 2013.
Great. Mike Purcell is here to present the recommendation to you for summer school for this coming year. Mike?
I sent you many documents.
Your
microphone, please.
Little blue light. Thank you, Mike.
I sent you many documents to read the next couple weeks. There's the blue light. Hello? All right. I had posted to the board docs many documents that reflect the course selections and budgets for each of the programs, including elementary, junior high, high school, the science camps, English language learning, the extended school year program, and performance music. Far too many to project on the screen, but what I did want to do is to highlight the changes that were made from last year and the reports that we had in October. And that was on the document that was called cover sheet, and I'm going to read through those things right now. The changes to course offerings that we are looking at implementing for this year is at the elementary school, splitting up the kindergarten class into classes we're going to call Kinder Booster and Kinder Up. Kinder Booster providing support services for students that did not meet all the expectations of their kindergarten classroom and identify those through their kindergarten teachers. And then one for enrichment for kids who had met all those requirements to give them more skills and advance them in preparation for first grade. At our junior high level, a few years ago, you may remember, we began offering a literacy enrichment class we call Shakespeare in the Summer. We're looking to mirror that on the math side, a math enrichment class focused on some project-based learning and some math competition style learning. So to prepare our kids for the math team experience they might have at the high school, give them those sorts of experiences at the junior high level, which right now is only available as an extracurricular for a fairly small set of some of the schools. And then at the high school, the most significant changes to course offerings based on some recommendations that came from this group about a year ago when I came to talk was to offer two not new classes, but new ways of delivery. And that is an online, predominantly online, but more an independent offering. So to offer some flexible scheduling for two classes in addition to the consumer ed class, which we've run for the past several years. One would be an introduction to algebra class that would be based on using a computer program that they've had a lot of success using in the classroom during the regular school year, the ALEX program, and then to have that teacher on site during the summer school time and have like an office hours sort of model, like a college model where you need to be in the classroom for 4 hours a week, but that can be on your time. And do that when you think you need to be there. You can certainly be more. You can be using the computers in that room. There's some check-in time that's mandatory, but also some time that you can do that on your own time. And using the ALEX program, we can monitor that, and the teacher would do that during their office hours, be able to monitor that and give the students feedback. The other class is the Computer Applications 2 class, a class that can be done almost exclusively independently, giving some teacher direction using the Canvas with the caveat, just like the consumer ed class, you need to actually come in at the end and be able to produce something on site so we know that it's actually you that can do it. So that is the two new offerings of an independent style, online style class that we're looking to offer. The other major change, we actually talked about this in October, was to move that math intervention, which was a pilot run through the ESY program, to the high school site. It just made sense actually where it belongs. So we're going to move that over there. It's a paid program. It's for students that need preparation to be ready for intro to algebra. So some kids with significant needs, typically in our regular education programs, that make sure that they are ready for high school in the math arena. The final major change is Dr. Hawkins and I sat with Mrs. Myers over transportation to get her expertise on looking at transportation for all of our programs, for junior high, high school, and elementary. And having taken that information, on the second page of that document, it talks about a proposal for funding for that. And transportation is the major barrier that we hear from our families when it comes to kids that really we need, especially our young, needy learners, on how to get them to summer school. At high school, those kids can find transportation, a ride, a friend, a bicycle, and at junior high, that they are also more mobile. Almost all of our kids that go to the elementary program come in a car because that's the way those kids transport themselves. What we're looking to do is to take down one of those barriers. And this has the dual purpose of taking down that barrier and also providing a great deal more safety on the site. And one of the things that previously at Steeple Run and now at Scott School, one of the concerns with those programs is having all of these kids coming out at the same time and nothing but cars outside. I mean, we would never do that at a regular school. to having those buses there to be able to move children in bulk really does improve safety. What Liz Myers proposed to me, and I'm going to propose to you, is a regional system, 6 buses that would run from the 6 corners, so to speak, of the district. So one on the northwest, and one north, and one northeast, and south side also. Runs regional buses that would stop at regional sites through there and transport students to Scott School, which is the elementary site, and then return them at the end of the day. Her estimate for cost for that would be approximately $9,000. What I'm going to ask you guys to consider over the next 2 weeks, and when I return for the next meeting, is to account for that as a separate line item. What I don't want it to do is to raise fees to pay for that, because a lot of this is looking to get students who traditionally can't pay to come, and so we maybe end up kind of charging to waive fees anyway. So what I'd like to do is I've become very invested, and I think we've seen that in the last couple of years, in having this be a program that pays for itself, and I want to sustain that. I'd like to look at this separately, because I think that's a way to really gauge if we are getting the gain that we want from it, be able to compare numbers to numbers. Are we getting more people to come, and the right people? And then also to not have that affect how we make decisions financially and how we instruct kids at this level. My recommendation for now is to try this at the elementary, see what sort of success that we have, come back to the table next year and see if we want to extend that out to another level. It would be, if we looked at other levels, the costs are about the same. It's $9,000 for 3 weeks, so it would be $9,000 for the junior high program, and then it would be double that, $18,000 for the high school program. But right now, we're just looking, my proposal is to just look at the elementary level, because those are the students that we really want to target the most. Those are the changes from last year. I certainly would like to, if you have any questions about any of those things.
So again, no action this evening.
Correct.
We'll be asking for action at the next board meeting.
I have 2 questions for you.
Yes.
There used to be more advanced classes during the summer, and I noticed really there's the honors geometry, and then the only other one was the special topics. And there used to be more of those. Is there not an interest in it, or?
We actually, we have phased some of them out, and it was due to lack of interest.
Okay.
Certainly something we can come back to the table with in future years is to look at what are the right classes to be doing that with. We haven't found too many. The ones that we look for, the kids that are looking to enrich, are the ones that are looking to advance so they can find other opportunities. They're looking at consumer ed, and they're looking at some of those kinds of U.S. history, those kinds of classes, rather than a class. Some of those classes, even honors geometries, are really, as a math person, it's tough to do in 6 weeks.
Right.
And that's one of the challenges that some kids find, is that they look at, are the students that are looking to enrich themselves say, well, let me get a prerequisite class in the summertime so that I can take that enriching class over 18 weeks instead.
Okay.
So that's typically what we see our kids and families deciding to do.
And my other question was on driver's ed. You hear from the community, people go, I was so lucky to get into that, or to be, to get in to that class. Are we turning kids away from driver's ed?
Not very often.
Okay.
They are typically pretty late to the game, if we are.
Okay.
There are some limitations with staff and cars and
so
time.
we're using all of our cars? And
Yeah, we're using absolutely full resources.
Okay.
Yep.
That answers my question. Thank you.
How, well, I would imagine for the elementary school kids, for the busing, are we going to be busing from sort of the concentrations of child care centers? Or, I mean,
Yes.
Is that what we're going to do, ask people where their kids are in the summer?
Yeah, what we are going to set up the transportation similar to how they do for some of our other summer programs, by seeing where kids are registered and have them express an interest in that transportation, and then work with transportation to set up a map that targets those kids. You know, Liz has a really good idea of where those stops would be already in her head.
Right.
But that where those kids actually come from may be a little bit different.
Right.
So this year it's we are certainly know that we're going to be stopping in certain parts of town that we think are going to be more predominantly hit, but then also make sure that we have stops within a few blocks of each other. Certainly we're not going to stop at every bus stop that we stop at for every school. that would be impractical.
I mean, that's what makes it useful. If we're just going to, pick up kids at BB school, parents still have to get the kids from their child care to the BB.
Right.
But if they're in a concentration of child care,
we're going to be closer than every school, but may not stop at every block or every certainly we'll stop in every neighborhood, but how close to every house we're going to kind of figure that out as we go a little bit. But Liz is very confident that she's going to be able to do that. One of the questions that may come up is how long would that be? The kids be on the bus? Liz estimates that for the furthest corners from Boe Meeting and Lyle and River and Ogden up north the other way, it would be a maximum of 45 minutes, which would put the kids on the bus at 7:45, which is early, but really to get across town at that time of day, it would take 25 minutes anyway, even if you weren't busing. So it's not that much additional time. It would get the kids home by 12:45 and do it very safely. So it seems like a long bus ride, but if you actually think of how long it would take to get there at rush hour, it's not that much longer.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mike, I just want to say I'm so appreciative that you've been the director of this program and you've taken things I've been the one saying online. We need our kids to work, our high school kids especially need to work in the summers, and they can't ask their employers, they're lucky enough to get jobs, to say, oh, by the way, I'd like to take this class. So thank you. And I think thinking out of the box on the transportation is brilliant. I, for one, say $9,000 is a small price to pay, especially on a trial basis, and to see if we're getting at the students that can make these gains. One question I have: our out of district tuition is not a lot more than our in district tuition. I'm taking an elementary class, 150 in district, 190 out. Is that so? We don't want to de-incent, but we do. We need to take care of our own as well. Are there many from outside the district that even care to participate in this program? Okay.
There's not, and certainly not enough that we're losing opportunities for kids and kids and taxpayers.
Perfect. Thank you.
But we did want to raise the fees a little bit because to help offset some other costs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for all you've done in this program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, we are up to schedule of events.
We have board meetings, art shows. On board docs, you can see the schedule of events coming up. February and March, they go lightning fast, and then we get to the end of the year so quickly. Anybody have anything on their agendas they want to highlight? If not, I will entertain a motion.
The intergovernmental dinner is March 11th.
As well as the discipline committee.
Oh.
Yeah. That's okay.
Okay.
I think Jim and I do discipline, so we have to. Bob Ross says, be there, we're there.
Just a reminder,
95th Street Library. The library's doing it this year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
just a reminder, we can't hit motion to adjourn. We have to go back to.
Oh, I'm
closed
sorry.
session.
We knew adjourn this, and we have to go back into the other. You know what? I'm sorry, I mixed those two up. The regional dinner, the regional Illinois dinner is on the discipline night, not the intergovernmental dinner. Intergovernmental dinner, what night did you say?
DuPage
March
ISA
11th.
meeting is on the night of the. Right.
Okay. We are going to adjourn and our open meeting, and we're going back into closed session. So a motion to come out of to adjourn
I move
for this.
we adjourn the open meeting to go into closed
And a second?
session.
And I need a motion, please, to go into closed.
Second.
Okay, and we need a roll call again. Ms. Bell?
Price.
Yes.
Romberg.
Yes.
Dennison. Weeks. Fielden.
Yes.
Patty.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.